a radio show out of Ontario that I do weekly hit on, and we want to talk some Bigfoot there with you. So please reach out to me on privately on DM if you don't mind. The gorgeous Laura Elizabeth, how are you? Donnie Cho, welcome to our channel. How are you? And who else has joined us? 405er, Sunsaver, R&R, nice to see all of you. R&R, you're looking lovely tonight. I'm just going to say that. Lou Sassel, I hope I pronounced that right. Oh, I get it. That's a great name, too. Fantastic name. Welcome to SOR Chat. How are you? And that's awesome. James Smith. Tony, what's up, man? Bonjour, Pascal. Comment ça va? I love you, man. Mi amore. That's more Italian. I know. But I love you, man. You're number one. Shadows, Little Marky Spender. How are you? And by the way, Little Marky Spender is old, people. Old. My house is 49 years old, and it is younger than him. Vera Ray, looking beautiful tonight. Thank you for joining us. And we're running out of time here. Scully, nice to have you back. And who else am I missing here before we get going? And Sweet Tony D, good to see you. Do me a favor, everyone. Let's get the horns up. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, reading up on Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our site. I tell you, what a way to get things going tonight. Nomar Slevik is here to talk UFOs, aliens, and paranormal experiences. In Hour 3, we go to the swamp with Swamp Dweller. John Hudson has the UFO report, and Shirky Poo will round things off with their great news that we have. All right, let's get right to it, shall we? Why not? Because that's what we do. Nomar Slevik has been fascinated by all things paranormal since childhood, beginning with a UFO encounter at the age of 4. Because of that experience, his life passion has been to research, investigate, write, and share UFO and extraterrestrial encounters from everyday people in a way that conveys the human element of profoundly strange encounters. You can find all of his books by going to slevikstore.company.site, and I highly suggest you do. Nomar, how you doing, man? It's good to have you on Spaced Out Radio tonight.
Hey, man. How you doing?
I am fantastic. This is a great way to get me right into the show because you know what? We can do all the research that we want. We can talk to all the so-called experts out there. But when it comes down to it, man, the feel of the people and what they are going through is what it's all about. And I am so thankful to have you here tonight, man.
I really appreciate that, and I like your sentiment as well. The last thing I ever want to be considered is an expert. The more I look into this, the more people that I talk to, the more questions that I have. I am not finding answers. I'm not finding very many whys. One of the best things that I can do, though, within my power, is to be able to sit with an experiencer and to hear them, to be non-judgmental, and hopefully be allowed to share their story, you know?
Dude, I hear you. And, you know, so many experiencers over the years, especially the last 4, since the government story of UFOs or UAP
Right.
took over. We've seen the experiencers really cast aside, pushed to the side, basically said, you know what? Your opinion right now doesn't matter. We got to figure out this threat narrative, and we got to figure out what these are and get funding for it and everything. And I'm all fine and dandy with that. But this is a phenomena that is not just affecting the militaries around the world. This is affecting everyday people. And I think, I've been saying on this show for about the last 2 years now that the experiencers, whether it's paranormal, cryptid, UFO, alien, are really the forgotten souls of our fields. Because I realize the stories are anecdotal, Nomar, but we still need to use that as a way to get direction.
Yeah, and it's anecdotal to who, really? I mean, it depends on what the audience is, because these are people, millions of people, and you put millions of witnesses in a jury trial. I mean, you're convicting that, whatever the situation is, all day with millions of witnesses. You know what I mean? So it's really all about perspective and who your audience is, I suppose. And when it comes to the government, there are other agendas that could be at play, without getting into too much. But, I want to hear from the person who's seeing the light outside of their car window while they're driving down the highway on a dark road, or they wake up exhausted with marks on their body for seemingly no reason. Those are the types of people I want to hear from.
No, I absolutely agree with you on that. And, there's two sets of people out there that I think have a lot more answers than those of the scientific branding are giving credit for. Number one is experiencers. And very few are actually looking into that. But number two is the indigenous, who've been here way before, the settlers ever came in. And they've been talking about these same stories for hundreds, if not thousands of years, being passed on from elders. And I'm just a firm believer, man, that the experiencers, no matter who they are, have some of the key components and puzzle pieces that the scientists just do not have and can't figure out because it sounds too woo.
Yeah. And it sucks because those types of people or organizations have the resources to try to bring in all these puzzle pieces to try to put something together. And me being a field researcher and an interviewer, and, I don't have the reach that, one of these other organizations could. And it sucks that it's being looked over,
I agree with you. Let's learn a little bit more about you here.
Yeah.
At 4 years old, how can you tell a UFO from a helicopter or an airplane?
I don't think I could. And it was looking back on that experience once I was a teenager, a young teenager, but at 4 years old, and this is still how my mind remembers it. I don't see anything different. But at 4 years old, I'm sleeping in my bed, and this loud sound wakes me up. And my eyes are kind of darting around, like looking for some sort of explanation. All of a sudden, I see like my window kind of light up, and I'm hearing rain, the pitter patter of rain on my window. I'm like, oh, it's a thunder and lightning storm. That must have been thunder that had woken me up, So I kneel up on my bed because I want to see the lightning. So I'm kneeling up on my bed and I'm watching the storm, and it's raining and it's cloudy and there's booms happening, and I'm seeing little, flashes of lightning. But then after a moment, there was this really disturbed lightning bolt. Like almost if I were to ask you to draw a lightning bolt, you would draw that jagged yellow line, and it was stuck in a cloud. That's how I remember it. And even at that age, I knew that lightning was there. It was visible for just a split second. But this lightning bolt was there, stuck in a cloud, and it was yellow, and there was electricity coming off of it, and there were booms happening. And then I don't really know what happened after that. I fell back asleep, I guess. I wake up in the morning, I go to the bathroom. On my way back from the bathroom, like walking down my hallway, it's facing my room and I can see out the window. And that lightning bolt is still stuck in the cloud. And, now it's daylight. So this kind of excited me, I suppose. And I ran downstairs to get my dad because I wanted to show him the lightning bolt that got stuck in the cloud. I bring him upstairs and it's gone. And I was trying to explain to him what I saw, and he was kind of doing what parents do when a kid is, acting that way. And he was kind of patting my head and be like, yeah. But I must have been really insistent because he kind of like had to kneel down, get on my level, put his hands on my shoulders. And he's like, buddy, like it didn't even rain last night. Like, I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't even really know what I thought. I wasn't scared. I was just confused. A couple weeks later, my parents woke my sister and I up, and it was the middle of the night. Again, I'm 4 years old. So, for all I know, that was 10 o'clock at night or it was 3 a.m. I have no idea. But my parents wake us up in the middle of the night, and my mom's putting my winter clothes on me. And then my dad scoops me up, takes me outside because they wanted to show us the Northern Lights.
Beautiful.
It's the only time I've ever seen them. Yeah. Gorgeous. And, it's these beautiful ribbons of light in the sky. So with those two incidents at a very young age, it was instilled in me that weird things happen in the sky and I should probably pay attention. And so I did. It just kind of snowballed, as I got older. And when I was a teenager and I was thinking back about some of my own experiences, I was like, oh my God, I wonder if that lightning bolt was like the first UFO I ever saw. Even though I can still only remember it as like a lightning bolt, or this yellow thing in the sky,
Right. I mean, that's pretty profound to have that sort of memory that it etched in your memory for this long. I mean, for you, it put you on a path to try and figure out some of these anomalies. Did you see more UFOs as time went on after this?
Yeah. I think I've seen 12 UFOs in my lifetime, and one of them was fairly recently, like last month. It was December, I believe. And when I say UFO, I mean I saw what the acronym means, an unidentified flying object. That term has become synonymous with aliens, which is why the government is using UAP as opposed to UFO. So what I'm saying is I've seen things in the sky that I can't explain on like 12 different occasions. I think a couple of those times it was probably space aliens. I can't think of any other thing that it could be, But yeah, I pay attention. I'm always looking up. Even when I'm signing my books, I sign my name and I usually write, look up, you never know, something like that. But yeah, always looking up, and I do see things. And sometimes I spot something, and I'm like, "Oh, what the hell is that?" And then I realize it was an airplane banking in the sun, and it was just the sun reflecting off a wing or something, So I don't just see something, make this huge assumption, and then lock that away. That's another UFO encounter I can share. It's not like that. I watch it. I kind of want to make sure that I really don't know what the heck I'm looking at,
Oh, I hear you there, man. I hear you there. I mean, I think we've all had that experience where we've stared up at the sky wondering, that satellite seems to be moving really, really fast. And why is it blinking? I mean, I think many of us have had that situation, but not only with UFOs, but you've also had a number of paranormal encounters and experiences too. Give us a story of what happened when that started.
Oh boy. Well, I started and I was part of a paranormal investigation team. I think that started around 2010, maybe something like that. And we ran it for a few years, I think 4, maybe 5 years. And then kind of life got in the way. So it quietly and amicably disbanded, and then there's some former members now that kind of picked up the torch, and they're doing some stuff with it now, which is great. So during those investigations, certainly had some unexplained experiences. But on a personal level, just living my life, I've had some truly unexplained encounters. And one of them was when I was in high school. And I got home from school, and I usually just kind of did the teenager thing, ran upstairs, up to my room, put some music on, and, was playing Nintendo or, whatever the hell. And it was around, I think, 5:30 or so. My sister gets home, and she had gotten home late because she was babysitting someplace, and she had been dropped off, and she came home. And then my father called. And I was yelling at my sister to answer the phone. And she was doing her own thing, and she didn't answer the phone. So I'm just reading Creepy Unsolved's message there. It's funny. So anyways, my dad calls. I pick up the phone, and he's, in a town that's like an hour away. And he called me because he wanted me to go down into the cellar and measure a fluorescent light bulb that had gone out, and he was buying a replacement for it.
Right.
So he wanted me to go down there. So, and we had cats at the time. My parents always have cats. And the big deal with the cellar door was to always keep the cellar door closed so the cats don't get down there, because there's places they can go and hide and get stuck and all that stuff. So I go down into the basement, unlock the door, turn on the light, go downstairs, and I measure the thing and get off the phone with my dad. I go back up to my room. About a half hour later, my sister comes like stomping up the stairs and like bangs on my bedroom door. And I'm like, what? I whip open the door. What do you want? And she's like, well, what the hell are you doing? You left the cellar door open and the lights on. Like, what are you doing? And I had to go down there and chase the cats and get them out. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I went down there to measure something for Dad, and I locked everything up. I don't know what you're talking about. Closed the door in her face. An hour later, my dad gets home. He comes clomping up the stairs, bangs on my door. And I'm like, what? And he's like, what the hell are you doing? You've left the cellar door open and the light on. I just spent 10 minutes trying to, wrangle the cats out of the friggin' basement. All of a sudden, my sister's door opens because she heard him yelling at me. And she's like, Dad, he had left it open previously, and I went down and had to get the cats out and shut off the light and lock the door. And you're saying it's open? It was open when you came home? And he's like, yeah. And he was annoyed. He had a long day, so he didn't really want to deal with us. So he stopped yelling at me, and my sister and I just kind of looked at each other. I'm like, I closed and locked the door. And she's like, no, I closed and locked the door, and shut off the light. And that was one of the first, besides me seeing some weird things in the sky, that was like the first odd paranormal kind of thing that happened, because something was obviously continuing to turn on the light and unlock and open the cellar door. Not the scariest thing, but it was certainly odd.
But nonetheless, I mean, isn't that annoying, though, man, to get blamed for something that you're not doing? Oh, yeah. And here it is the bloody ghost in the house trying to get you in trouble here. That's not very fair.
And that's the same cellar that my dad. This is the old house, and they had the dirt floored cellar and all that stuff. And when I was writing my first book, I sat down with my folks, and I was getting some stories from my mom, and I was telling some of my own encounters, and I wanted to make sure I had like dates correct. And my mother's sisters had some experiences, and I was trying to get that info correct. And my dad was there too, and he goes, I had this really weird dream about going into the cellar. And I'm not sure if that was a dream. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because, my dad's a big skeptic, and, doesn't really, he's been really supportive of what I do, but he has his own belief scale, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, I woke up in the middle of the night and I can't hear anything. It's like I'm in a vacuum. And one of the cats is sitting on the floor, and I sit up in bed, and it's just staring up at me. And I know that it wants me to follow it. I'm like, okay. And so I stand up, and then the cat starts leading me, out of the bedroom, and then down the hall, and then down the stairs. And every once in a while, it'll turn back and look at me to make sure I'm still following it. And again, I can't hear anything. It's like silent. And the cat stops at the basement door, and it looks up at me, and he goes, okay, I guess we're going down in the basement. So he opens up the basement door. He doesn't know what happens to the cat after that. He just knows that he's down in the basement now. And he's in the basement, and there's a wood stove that was kind of like in this back corner. Not even a corner. It was like this back wall. And on either side of it was very small space. A child probably could, maybe slide in between there. It was very thin, but on either side. And through behind those small openings was an even smaller opening, and that's where he would store storm windows. Where you live and where I live in the Northeast of the United States, winter's cold and we put up storm windows, in the winter, help keep the house less drafty. And that's where he stored the windows. Mm-hmm. So he's facing the wood stove, and he says that this thing that was about 5 feet tall and completely green peeked out from where he stored the storm windows. He said it peeked out, looked at him, and then went back behind the wall. And he said he watched it for a moment, and then after another moment, the thing stuck its head out again, and then hid back behind the wall. And then the next thing you know, he's just kind of getting up in the morning. That's really all he remembers about it. And I couldn't believe that was my dad telling me that story, especially when he said, I'm actually not sure that was a dream. That might be a memory, and it gave me goosebumps at the time. And my mom was like flabbergasted. Why didn't you ever tell me this? And he's like, I don't know. I just thought I was dreaming at the time, But it was a fascinating story.
I remember when I had the same type of father you did. My dad, when I had my Bigfoot encounter in 2013, I was all excited, and I'm like, I called up my dad, and I'm like, hey, man, you're not going to believe what happened to me tonight. And I told him what happened, seeing the Sasquatch, and he goes, no, you didn't. I said, yes, I did. And he goes, no, you didn't. And my dad is the minute you get into a conversation that he doesn't like, he's one of these guys who immediately goes deaf ears, or he goes Coke versus Pepsi, or what the Vancouver Canucks are doing, like anything to deflect. And I said, Dad, why do you think I would call you and tell you this if it didn't happen? Oh, I don't really believe in that crap. I said, I don't care if you believe in it or not. This is something that happened. It's left a mark on me now, and I wanted to tell you this story. Yeah, whatever. And I hung up the phone, and he called like 3-4 more times. I didn't even bother picking up, and I was so upset. So a few months later, I finally sat him down, and I'm like, Dad, I need to have a talk with you. And all this weird stuff that was going on with the UFOs and everything that alike. And he finally, I don't know what clicked in him. He sat. I remember him sitting on my rocking chair, and he kind of leans back, takes a deep breath, and he goes, at this time he's 67. He goes, I'm 67 years old, and there are things out there that I don't understand. And so when we moved up north, I was doing a ghost tour at the local museum that I ran, and I took him on the tour. And,
cool.
And he had a K2 meter in his hand, and it was like bright red. And he goes, hey, son, what does this mean? I'm like, well, Dad, there's a little girl up here, and she's probably next to you. And he starts shaking. Wow. Right? I said, Dad, why don't you put your hand out and ask her to hold your hand? And be damned if he doesn't feel the hand of a little girl go into his hand. And he's like, son, I could feel her. And ever since then, he's like right into it. He doesn't watch the shows or anything, but he's just like, hey, man, there's something out there now.
That's amazing. And, my dad requires that I give him a copy every time I have a book come out.
Good.
And it was the second one, I think, that I put out, and he was reading through all these stories. And he's like, you really sat down, and these people told you these things. I'm like, yeah. And sometimes it gets emotional. Like, these are people that don't get to get things like this off their chest very often, especially with somebody who's willing to hear them.
Right. Hey, I'm going to get you to hold on right there, Nomar, because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. This is going to be a fun night tonight. Nomar Slevik is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio, SlevikStore.company.site. You can get all of his books like Granite Skies, Otherworldly Encounters, A Strange Trilogy, and more. Spaced Out Radio continues with UFO and paranormal talk all night long. Coming up next.
Hey, Jeremy Jones, thanks, man.
Right on, man. This is a good start. Solid start. Besides you looking like my younger brother of 15 years previous. Father, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Shout out to Dylan and Connor and Laura.
Yeah.
What's up, guys?
Yes.
Also, shout out to Aroma Joe's. I'm drinking an Aroma Joe's coffee in specifically in Ellsworth, Maine, but they actually have locations all around Maine. But
yeah,
this is good stuff.
Shout out to the 108 Mile Lake that provided my water tonight. Oh man, we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna have some fun. God. Well, look at this. Oh, wow, it's Dave versus younger Dave. Hi, Mennonite Abe. How you doing? I'm just going to call it right now. Whoever recommended that we book Nomar, thank you. This is going to be a great show. I can already tell. I can already tell, guys.
That might have been Thin Lizzy.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Shout out Thin Lizzy.
She's awesome. She's awesome. We are blessed with such a great team behind the scenes here. Yeah.
Jose, thanks, man.
Yeah, there we go. Thin Lizzy, it's me! It's me! Thanks, Lizzy. Love you, dear. I have the best booking crew ever with Lizzy and Dirty Filth and Spookles the cat. They just do such a great job for us. They really do. All right.
Don't mind me. I'm just reading comments here.
Oh, you read away, man. You read away.
I think I was telling Laura earlier that been binging true crime all day. I found a new channel that I really like, and so just a lot of true crime is swimming around in my head. Do you hear about the Brian Laundrie update that came out today?
No, what happened there?
Well, apparently the FBI has confirmed that Brian Laundrie admitted to killing Gabby and wrote it down in his notebook before he killed himself.
Oh wow!
And they were able to get that information from the notebook, and I guess they're gonna, release what was actually written, in a little while, like who knows, a couple weeks or something in their final report. But it was interesting to see that.
That's just a sick story, and sad story.
Yeah, terrible, sad.
Right. I mean,
oh, nice, thank you, Lizzie.
I mean, you look at that story. The fact that he went and killed himself, and then, put himself in an area of a swamp where he knew alligators were going to eat his body and snapping turtles.
Right.
That's pretty sick thinking right there.
Yeah, and some people brought up in the comments here, like, the surprise the parents haven't been charged yet. Like, me too. Like, he came home solo. You know what I mean? Like, it had to have told his parents what was going on.
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of investigation there going. I really do believe
I would think
that.
so.
So. My ears are plugged. Trying to pop them right now. Trying to pop them. All right. Oh, let's get rid of that. And let's see here, right there.
Could I technically swear during this time if I wanted to?
If you wanted to, now is okay.
I don't want to, but
oh yeah,
I like having the option.
It's quite all right. It's quite all right.
How's everybody doing in the chat? Enjoying the show so far, I hope.
They're all hanging on out, doing their thing.
Definitely, Jeremy. Jeremy and mentioned Ayla Reynolds, and that's a pretty big case out of Maine. True crime case. I think there was some recent updates to that. something with the father. He's finally getting questioned or something. Something like that. Oh, you're in Waterboro? Cool.
Hi, Sunrays on Twitch. How are you? Thanks for tuning us on in. We got about 30 seconds. Thank you to Dry Toast for the awesome super chat. It is a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. If you're new, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell. Give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs sideways if you want. We'd appreciate it. And after the show, make sure that you hit a comment on what you think of what we're chatting about tonight. So let's have some fun.
Not yet, Tracy.
We're going to get going here in about 10 seconds. Hi, gorgeous Marie. Hi, Eva. And I'll get you to hold on there, Nomar. We're going to get going right now. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate it. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do us the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, reading Shirky Poo's Newswire, checking out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Author Nomar Slevik is here tonight. He's got some great books out on the paranormal, UFOs, anything supernatural. You can find it at slevikstore.company.site if you want to check out his swag. I highly recommend it. We're talking UFOs, aliens, contact, and any type of experience. It's all about the experiencers tonight. Nomar, welcome back.
Thanks so much. Pleasure to be here.
My friend, you have interviewed numerous people throughout the years regarding the phenomena. Is there a story that you could share with us that really still stands out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody's familiar with Mothman. Sorry, Kim, it's Slevik. Thanks. So everybody knows the story of Mothman, and I was working on one of my books. This was 3 or 4 years ago now. And I was curious to know if there was any sort of Mothman-like story that happened in my state. So I simply Googled Mothman in Maine to see if anything would come up. And I did find something. It was probably the 3rd or 4th page on Google search, And I clicked on it, and it was really just this headline, something to the effect of Camden, Maine spots Mothman-like creature. And there was nothing more to it. So then I started searching Camden, Maine, Mothman sighting, blah, 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 based on what I had found there. And I kept finding that same headline. I couldn't get this full story, and I was fascinated by it. The town of Camden, Maine, at the time was only 45 minutes away. And if there was a Mothman sighting that close to where I live, of course I wanted to check it out, but I would have driven anywhere in the state to go see. So I have a lot of colleagues in the field, and there's this woman. She's a friend and colleague. Her name is Michelle Sawyer, and she actually just put out a book about Bigfoot in Maine. So check that out. Shout out, Michelle. But I sent her that information that I had found, Camden Man spots Mothman. And she did some digging around. And a few days later, she found not only the write-up, but also the gentleman's name. So the write-up wasn't very much. It was just about a paragraph. But I had the name. So I plugged that into the old Facebook machine. And I started messaging everybody with that name that was from the state of Maine. And you know how that is. You write this little copy and paste message. And, if this isn't you, sorry for bothering you. After the, 8th, 9th, 10th attempt, it was the right person. I found him. And I asked him if he would be willing to share his story with me. I explained that I was an author and that I'm working on a book and all that good stuff. And he said yes. So he goes on to tell me this story that I think it was 2002, he was 17 years old at the time. And Camden, Maine is a small coastal town. Think any Stephen King movie with a small coastal Maine town, and that's the kind of town this town is. And he was downtown walking towards his apartment, which was about a mile away from town. So there's this little hill that he's walking up, and he's just walking on the road, and there's not many cars, small town. It's September, he's back in school, so there aren't the tourists all over the place. And he's walking, and while he's walking, he's hearing this chirping, squeaking sound, and it's unfamiliar to him. So he's looking down at his feet to see if there's like this rat or mouse he's about to step on or something. And while he's looking down, he sees this huge shadow go by on the tar. And he's like, what the hell? So he looks up because obviously something was casting a shadow. He looks up and he says that he saw this gigantic flying oddity. He said the body was about 4 to 5 feet long. The wings were, we'll get to the measurement of the wings, but the wings were really long. And he said the wings looked bat-like and they were translucent. And then he also said that the head looked like this little square or something, and there were tubes coming out of it. There's actually a drawing of it that he did that's in the book. So this really weird thing that he's seeing flying above him, and it's making this chirping sound. So he's watching it, and it kind of scoops down, and then it scoops up over the apartment building that he lives in. And it proceeds to fly into the swamp that's behind their apartment building. He said when it kind of scooped up and flew over the apartment building that the wings measured from one side of the eaves to the other. And he measured it, and it was 25 feet long. That's like the size of a Cessna or something. And that thing is flying above him. So he immediately told his parents, he told friends and family. He made a big deal out of it. He was fascinated by it. And he's like, I've lived in this area my whole life. I know that's not a sandhill crane. It's not a condor. Like, I know what I saw. It was this 4 or 5 foot, body thing with a 25-foot wingspan. And it might live in the friggin' swamp behind my apartment. And, people aren't calling him a liar. They believe that he saw something, but they can't put a whole lot of weight into it because of, they didn't see it for themselves. So he's kind of living with this story, and, his friends know about it and all that good stuff. He graduates from college. He graduates high school, goes to college, and it's 2 years later, and he's back home now visiting for the summer. I think he's got a summer job and all that good stuff. And he and a buddy are riding around town. So while they're driving, it's pretty much 25 miles an hour, like everywhere in Camden. And while they're driving, he said this thing smacked into their windshield. And he said the thing looked like this like paper mache of goo just smacked into his windshield. But there was one wing that was extended out. And he said it was the same type of wing on this huge creature that he saw a couple years earlier. And so he's wondering if maybe it was a juvenile version of this thing that hit into his car and he killed it. So the car just kind of rolls to a stop. He said all of the skin was translucent and it just looked like this paper mache mess on his windshield. And the car finally comes to a stop. Then all of a sudden, one of the wing flutters and then the whole thing comes to life and takes off. And he and his buddy are just like, what the hell was that? And they both had this eerie sensation during this experience. Well, what developed after these sightings was he started to have dreams of a extraterrestrial nature. In these dreams, and he knows that they were dreams, they weren't memories or things like that, but he would be standing in that same spot in the road when he saw that big figure the first time. And instead of this weird Mothman-like creature, it was a UFO. And as soon as he like looked up at it, it roared and came to life and took off. And it was this reoccurring dream that he had. And he came back another summer, and now he has a girlfriend. So I think we're 3 years removed from the original sighting. They're back in Camden, Maine, and he and his girlfriend are kind of watching the sky, and it's dusk, and they're laying on the hood of his car, and they're parked kind of close to the swampy area. And in the distance, he can hear that same type of chirping and squeaking. And he knows that it's those creatures. And the girl that he's with, she's like, well, what the hell is that? I've never heard anything like that, and he's like, well, and he shared the story with her, and he has since gone on to marry this woman, and they bought a house, and they live in southern Maine now. And in southern Maine, he started having, now he's older now, this is, 15 years removed or something like that. He's in southern Maine now, and he started having reoccurring extraterrestrial themed dreams again, but really odd and kind of innocent. He would be in his bathroom washing his hands. This is in the dream. He's washing his hands, and there's this little window to the right of him. And he'd be washing his hands, and he'd look out the window, and he'd see a UFO hovering above the treetops. And that was his dream, and it was reoccurring. And that's pretty much his whole story. And since I live close to the area, I got the address of where this occurred. I went down there to go check it out. So one of the first things I did was go to the apartment building, and I measured the eaves. And sure enough, it was 25 feet. It might have been 24 and, some change or something. And it turns out there's this little parking area that you kind of have to go a roundabout way, like behind the neighborhood, to go down to the swampy area. So one of the things I do as an investigator is I let the cops know what I'm doing. The last thing I want to do is be hassled in the middle of the night while I'm trying to do something, I don't want to be a problem for anyone, and I don't want to get in trouble. So the first thing I do before I go out to investigate this is I go to the cop shop, and I'm like, hey, here's what I'm doing, and here's why I'm doing it. And they're always basically like, okay, weirdo, thanks for letting us know. So I'm kind of covered that way. So now I'm parked down in the swampy area. It's in the middle of summer. I think it was like end of July, early August or something. So the mosquitoes are terrible. But I want to keep my windows down so I can hear if anything's walking out there. It's pitch black. I'm seeing fireflies everywhere. And while I'm sitting there, I can see these two red eyes in the distance, maybe 100 yards away. And it's kind of high up. It's like 12 feet up from the ground. And I'm like, what am I seeing here? And I'm watching it. And every once in a while, I'll catch a glimpse of it. It's not for very long, but it's these two big red eyes in the swampy area where I'm told there's this freaking Mothman-like creature has been seen swooping down into this area.
You're seeing
I'm
this.
seeing it.
Oh my gosh.
I'm seeing it. So I'm seeing these red eyes about 12 feet high.
Oh, that's not good.
So I'm seeing it intermittently. So I finally maneuver my car, and I switch on my headlights, and all I'm seeing is woods. And there's trees and all that stuff. And these eyes were just really big. But I assumed they're eyes. I'm not really sure. That's all that happened that night, which is pretty astonishing in my book, And I guess the conclusion that I came to is that A, Mothman was watching me, or B, there might have been I'm not familiar with the town. I don't live there. I go there once in a while. So maybe there's a road back there that I'm not aware of, which is possible because it's, in a tiny neighborhood and there's roads everywhere. And maybe every once in a while I'm seeing the brake lights of a car, like going down a hill or something. And I'm like, that really could be it because it never moved. You know what I mean? It didn't appear natural in any way. They'd come on for a split second and then they'd go away. So, I don't know what to make of it, but that was one of the stranger, more fascinating, really cool things, that I checked out and interviewed somebody for and all that stuff.
Did you feel in danger at any time when you saw those red eyes?
No, I was fascinated. Yeah.
How come you didn't move closer?
It was the way the area was. I wasn't going to go walking into the swamp at 2 a.m, and so there was no way to like drive closer, and I wasn't just going to walk in thick woods, in the middle of the night for fear of falling, because I'm a major klutz, and I didn't want Mothman to attack me if it was in fact Mothman. You know what I mean?
No kidding.
I was prepared from an investigator's standpoint of having some equipment with me. There was a parabolic mic. I had some night vision camera stuff, and the night vision camera was almost useless with the swamp and all of the insects that were around everywhere.
Right.
I couldn't see far beyond it, so it was almost useless. So I was just relying on sitting there in complete darkness, and seeing these red eyes come up was fascinating. But I couldn't do a whole lot, or at least I thought I couldn't do a whole lot. I did go back, during the daytime, obviously, and I was there in the daytime beforehand. And to get to where that area was, there's just no other way than walking in swampy stuff. And again, I wasn't going to do that. But I do know that there are two roads that kind of are behind that area. And where I was parked, maybe the angle of a hill or something. So I at least know that there are roads kind of beyond where I saw those eyes,
Well, I like the fact that you were very open-minded to the fact that it could have been a Mothman, but you're also skeptical enough to know that there is potential other possibilities. And I think,
absolutely.
And the reason why I say that and make that comment is so many times we see people, they sway way too much to the left on the skepticism side and way too much to the other side on the true belief side. And we have to be able to be our own quality skeptic in order to try and find logical answers before we think everything is paranormal. So, Mothman is one of these topics that is just, how do you put it? It's just odd. With all these new sightings allegedly in Indiana and Illinois with the Chicago Mothman that Lon Strickler and his team have been looking into. What do you think this creature is?
I have no idea. I couldn't even venture a guess. I know that I'm easily swayed when I'm given really good information. And what I mean by that is I read a Mothman book by Lauren Coleman, and I'm like, okay, this might be a flesh and blood undiscovered creature of some sort that people are seeing, and then I read John Keel's material, and I'm like, oh, this is some sort of extraterrestrial, robot of some sort, or, some sort of doomsday prophecy type of figure for whatever reason, so I can be swayed when I'm given really rational information from a lot of different witnesses, but my own personal belief on what Mothman is, I have no idea. I just really want to see one myself, and maybe I saw the eyes of one, or I was looking at bright lights. I'm not really sure, but I have seen some creatures in my day.
What have you seen?
One thing I want to cover first before I get into a new story. Shout out to all the Maine people that are in here. That's really cool. And also, I think it's Marie or Mary. She asked about some true crime channels on YouTube, and I just wanted to shout out that chapter and True Crime Recaps. Those are two really good ones to check out. And they're kind of short form, 15, 20, 30 minutes, and and they have tons of videos, so check those out. All right. So in February of 2020, which seems like eons ago because it was just before the pandemic dropped.
Yeah.
And so it seems like forever ago. But I was right in my home area. I was literally 4 miles from where I live. And it's 6:45 in the evening. In February in Maine at 6:45, it's pitch dark. It gets dark really early. So I'm driving on this road. It's a 45-mile-an-hour road, and I'm going right around that speed or so. It's a not very well-traveled road because I kind of live in the sticks. So I'm driving along, and I have my high beams on. And on the left-hand side of the road, I see this really tall figure. And it takes this really exaggerated step like over the ditch. The type of road I live on has ditches on either side, for drainage and all that.
Yes.
And it takes this exaggerated step from the side of the road into the woods over the ditch and disappears into the woods. My lights shined on it for a second, 3 seconds, something like that. And it was completely black, like shiny black, like a beetle type black, like an exoskeleton. And honestly, it looked like this 5 foot, maybe 6 foot tall Blair Witch figure, those stick figures
right.
they made for Blair Witch.
Yeah.
It looked like that, but it had antlers. And so, Wendigo? I don't know. So I see it. I've never seen anything like this. So I'm freaking out as a witness. I'm trying to put my researcher hat on at the same time. They're not working well with each other. And it was like a 3-second sighting, and I'm coming up on the area where it walked into the woods really fast because it was like 100 yards away, and I'm going like 45 miles an hour. So I come to a stop where I think it walked into the woods. So now I'm just stopped in the middle of the road. A car could be coming at any time. So I don't really get out or anything, but I do roll down the window because I wanted to see if I could hear something crunching in the snow that's in the woods. I don't hear anything, but this really putrid smell, like rotting eggs, fills the car. And it's the first time I ever smelled something like that. But we've all read those stories about these putrid smells, especially with Bigfoot, but also Dogman and all sorts of other types of things people see. And I couldn't believe that I saw something and now I'm smelling something so terrible. So I don't hear it. Again, this is all happening within just a couple of minutes. I don't hear anything. I'm smelling this thing that's terrible. And it's so bad that I had to roll all 4 windows down for the rest of the ride home, which was only a few miles because it stunk so bad and I couldn't stand it. So I get home and I write everything down immediately from like a researcher standpoint. I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget anything. So I wrote everything down and then I actually emailed it to a buddy of mine. So I'm like, this just happened. I just want it to, I want somebody else to have a copy of it. I ended up sharing it publicly later with a gentleman named Brent Rains. He's a long time UFO investigator. Yeah. So anyway, I went back the next day again where I thought it had walked in, but this wasn't an accurate measurement by any means. I didn't see any weird footprints or anything, but I started doing some research about my immediate area and where this thing was seen. And it turns out that back in 95 or 96, something like that, there was a pretty intense UFO sighting. And when I say intense, it was pretty low. It was right around treetop, maybe just slightly below treetop, right in these people's kind of yard, and the whole family saw it, and then it took off, and nobody had any memories of like being abducted or seeing a creature or anything like that. But a pretty intense UFO encounter right in the same area that I didn't even know about, being a UFO researcher, so I thought that was pretty interesting. And then literally last week, this kid, I'm part of a Facebook group, and it's Unexplained Maine. And I encourage anyone to go follow that Facebook group. Just tons of people are sharing really cool encounters that they have in Maine. So I'm a part of that group, and I'm scrolling through, and this kid who lives in the next town over from me talks about seeing this tall, lanky creature with antlers following his friend group as they're like walking. And they're seeing it out of the corner of their eye. They're seeing it hide behind something and peek out. And he said that it was really distressing to all of them. And now he feels as though it's attached to him in some way. So I responded to his post and let him know what I saw. And then I let him know what, again, I'm no expert, but what I have heard about research for things like that. And, where silver and, sage and salt and, old wives' tales, if you will, but things that might be able to help with that,
Oh, man. We'll continue that story when we come back because I think there's a lot more to it than where we're going. I love story time, man. Absolutely love story time with real experiences from real people. and author Nomar Slevik is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Find his books, slevikstore.company.site. Highly recommend them. We're having a great time. We got Nomar for another hour here on the show. Let's have some fun with experiencer stories next.
Night, Jim Bob. Thanks for checking it out.
This is a fantastic show so far, man. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad.
We'll blame Thin Lizzy for how good this one is. You're in trouble, Thin Lizzy. I'm teasing.
Good one, Jeremy Jones. I definitely have some thoughts on Dr. Hopkins. I actually talked to Hopkins' nephew's widow, so kind of third hand there, but she was around during the whole Hopkins thing and how they feel that whoever's not familiar, Hopkins is a Men in Black story that happened in Old Orchard Beach, Maine, and it's actually been covered on a bunch of different things.
Your audio just went weird.
Oh yeah, it is, isn't it?
The minute you started talking Bud Hopkins, your audio went weird.
I mentioned Men in Black.
I don't know if that's on my side too, or hi, Scary Gary, how are you? I just got.
You're sounding wrong to me.
Hold on. I gotta quickly check my audio here. I think it's on my end. Apparently, okay. Give me 2 seconds here. What happened here? Okay, let's quickly, how do we do this? I'm gonna quickly log out of, keep you going. Oh, if I log out, okay, we gotta try this, hold on. No, that didn't end it. Testing 1 2. All right, bear with me here. All right, we should be clean now. All right, I figured it out. I've had that happen once before, and I didn't know what it was. Your microphone's on mute. If you want to turn your mic on. Or is it me that put you? No, it's you. It's not me, It's you. No. Yeah, we got it. We got it cleared up there.
Cool.
And no, just one of my audio programs just kind of went wonky there for a quick second.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is MIB.
The Mibs. Lovely Lavira is back. How are you? Who did I miss? Oh, hey, Clam. Let's see who else has come on in here.
Yeah, that's right, Kira.
Little Bobby Birkins. Scary Gary. There we go. Now we're all caught up. I'm good now.
Yeah, R.I.P. Bob Saget, Meatloaf, Louis Anderson. Some folks we lost recently. I saw some RIPs earlier.
Smoky Mountain Wanderer, good to see you. Who else came in here? Steve Wolf, the gorgeous Magic Maiden, Joe Smith, Stephen Finnegan, good morning to you in the UK. Here come the hour 2 people. They're coming for us.
You sound a little lower in my headset now.
Do I? My
sound loud.
I'm not piping up for yet.
Gotcha.
Radio voice hasn't come through yet. We got about 2 minutes.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Clifford Mahooty. The gorgeous Dirt Road. How are you? little Nicole Sakic. How are you? I always got aliens, Uncle Dale. Always got aliens.
Thanks, Steve.
Mm-hmm. All right, we got about 90 seconds. Reminder to all of you, great weekends lined up for Lynn Wallington, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow she has paranormal investigator David Spinks. On Sunday, Jim Goodall talking aviation. And, of course, he's a legend. And then, hi, Terry Brown, how are you? And then the after-hours show, Big Willie, Gemma J, John Hudson coming on in right after Lynn to take you into the night with after-hours. And, of course, don't forget Las Vegas Spaced Out Radio Party, April 22nd to 24th. We're going to do a live show in Vegas. We are. If you want to go and you're 100% confirmed that you are going, let us know at info@spacedoutradio.com. We've got about 22, 23 people confirmed right now. That's a pretty good total, and we're going to have a good time. So, yeah, we got 30 seconds here, everyone. 20 seconds.
Got you.
And here we go, everyone.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter @Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Cacography. Cacography is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as a clam sets the password each and every night, right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We may have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot, reading Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter @Spaced Out Radio, Instagram @Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok @Spaced Out Radio. Author, podcaster, Nomar Slevik is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio, and we are talking about people's experiences, because we both agree that experiences are really the way to many answers of the unknown. And you can find all of his books at slevikstore.company.site. Highly recommend them for your library. Nomar, welcome back.
Thanks so much. It's been fun, man.
Let's get to some UFO sightings. You have written about UFOs and encounters people have had with extraterrestrials. What are people telling you about their encounters?
Well, I talk to a wide gamut of people, and I get lots of different stories. There are some common threads, here and there, especially in regards to abductions. But a big part of talking to people is recognizing the mental health concerns that present themselves with these experiencers. I myself, I struggle with my own mental health issues. I struggle with anxiety and depression.
Me too.
I to this day, I have suicidal ideation. Some days are really dark, and I'm still here. A friend of mine told me, just get to midnight, just make it to midnight, and stop looking at so much of a big picture, because I can get overwhelmed sometimes, and sometimes I can really be hard on myself because I wasn't as productive as I thought I should have been or something. And I'm looking at, the next 4 weeks or, the next year when I'm involved in working on a book. But if I can just make it to midnight, I know I'm going to be okay. You know what I mean? So what I found is that a lot of experiencers are suffering from their own form of PTSD. And it's not even their own form of PTSD. It is PTSD. Their catalyst for it is different. My catalyst for anxiety and depression is not extraterrestrial. I didn't have the best childhood, and there are factors that in my personal life that have added to that. So, but some of these people that I talk to, their issues are these extraterrestrial encounters that plague them. And sometimes it plagues them their whole entire life. And one of my latest books, it's called Granite Skies. And in it, it's the story, it's one man's story. His name's Mike Stevens. And he's had a lifetime of encounters. And his started around 3 years old as well. And throughout his lifetime, he really struggled with his mental health. And he was in a relationship with a woman, and that crumbled. He was married, and then that crumbled. And he's a father, and he's actually always had a really great relationship with his daughter, which is awesome. But he's been struggling internally for so long. And some of his stories are completely insane and unlike anything I've ever heard before. And he entrusted me to tell his story. And with how raw and genuine he was with me, I felt for the reader that I too had to be genuine and raw with my own emotions and what was happening in my life during this process. And what he was going through was triggering to me. And I share in the book, things that I had been struggling with. So setting out to write this book, the UFO field is riddled with tons of books, and it's hard to get your voice out there. And why the hell do I even want my voice out there? What else can you write about that hasn't already been written about the UFO experience? Well, in my opinion, it's the true experience, the good, bad, and the ugly when it comes to the experiencer. And if we can tell the ugly part of these stories along with everything else, it helps to normalize the conversation about mental health and suicide. And so more people are comfortable, hopefully, in sharing their story. And even if they can't share their story, at least they know Mike's story and they're not so alone. And that's a really good thing as well. Hopefully somebody reads the book and it saves their life. We save one life, that would be amazing. It was a bit of a rant, sorry there, but it's certainly something that's become important with my research and my work over, the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years is being comfortable sharing their truth within their encounter, if that makes sense.
It does completely. And much like you, I am very open about my depression and anxiety that I suffer from. I have been med-free since 2014, and the good part for me is doing this show on a nightly basis gives me enough of a high with the endorphins that I actually stay away from those dark clouds. And as I've got older, I've been able to really try to contain my thinking from those dark sides, So, anybody who talks about it is a winner in my books, because this is a subject that has been pushed under the rug for so long, especially for men. Men have, I'm not saying this doesn't affect women, because it does. It affects everybody on this planet. But from a man's point of view, men are always taught, buck up, toughen up, hold those feelings in. And we're not allowed to allow them to express, which is why male suicide rates are always much higher than female suicide rates. But, I mean, the idea that you're actually going into these places, talking to these people who are suffering after what happened to them. Tell me about the power, and tell the audience about the power of sitting across from someone and looking them deadpan in the eye and saying, "I believe you."
It's devastating and amazing all at the same time. There was this woman an older woman who I met in a diner in the town. I drove to her town, and, we met in a public place, and we had spoke beforehand about her encounter, and I wanted to interview her in person. So she tells me this amazing story, and I'll tell that story first, and then I'll get into what it was like being there. And this is only part of her story, because we sat there for like 4 hours. But part of her story is, this took place in the 90s, and she was married at the time, and she had 2 kids at the time. The kids were teenagers, and it was about 9:00 at night, and the kids were downstairs, and they were getting ready to watch a movie. I don't know if it was, a DVD or, a VCR tape, or if it was on TV. I don't know. And the parents were upstairs, and the husband was already in bed, and she was getting ready for bed, and they were going to watch their own movie in bed. So he's already in bed, and she's in the bathroom kind of getting ready for the night, brushing her teeth and all that stuff. And her husband notices this weird light outside their window. And he goes, "Hey, honey, like, what is that? That's not the moon, is it?" Because I guess it was really bright. And so she comes in, and she looks out the window, and she's like, "No, that's definitely not the moon. I don't know what that is." And it was like this really big ball of light. And it was, above the treetops and kind of high in the sky, but they knew it wasn't the moon. So they go, "Well, let's go downstairs and go outside and look at it." So they come downstairs, and they start going outside, and the kids are like, "What the heck are you guys doing?" They're like, "Oh, there's this weird light outside. We're going to go see it." And they're like, "Well, we're coming too." And they're like, "Okay." So they go on their front porch, and where the light was, they actually had to go to the side of the porch and kind of look around the house to see it. So all 4 of them are there, and they're looking at this light in the sky. They look over here, there's the moon, and they look back, and they're like, "Okay, well, that's obviously not the moon." So while they're watching it, the light then comes right in front of them. And again, it's probably treetop level now, but now it's in front of them. So they're all standing at the porch, and they're staring at it. And then it just blinks out. And they're like, "Wow, geez, that was friggin' weird." And they all kind of like, "Huh, okay, well, let's go back inside." So they go back inside, and the kids are like, "Ooh, what the heck? The movie's done." The credits were rolling for the movie. And the woman, the mother, she was like, no, it's just starting. And they're like, no, that's the end credits. And she's like, "What?" So she goes to look at the time on the stove and sees that it's after 11 p.m. It's like 11:05 or something. And she's like, "What? How did 2 hours pass? This makes no sense." And the family didn't know what to make of it. They still don't know what to make of it. There's no memory, but they had 2 hours of missing time as they stared at this light that was in the sky in front of their home. So we're in the diner, and she's explaining all this to me. She's in her 70s now, and it's really powerful to be with a witness. It's fine if they don't want to meet, and we can go through Facebook or email or maybe even talk on the phone. But if you can meet with a witness, you get to hear the tone in their voice. You get to see their body language. You get to feel the emotion of what they're telling you. And by the time she was done telling me her stories, she had tears welling up in her eyes. I was feeling the emotion as well, and my eyes were welled up. And she looked at me, and she said, I just want to know, why me? Tell me that. It's the only thing that I need to know. I'm 70-something years old. I just need to know why. This is why I'm meeting with you." Whoa, that's a big thing to put on me. So
big time.
I look at her, and all I could say is, "I have no idea. I have no answers for you. What I can tell you is that I'm going to share your stories, And maybe somebody else like you will read the story that's had their own experience and is feeling some kind of way about it. And they'll read your story. And at the very least, they'll feel like they're not alone. And that's a really big deal in my book. And that seemed to satisfy her. She understood and totally got the power of somebody not feeling alone because she's sharing her story. So that worked for both of us, but that's the power of interviewing a witness in person.
It really is. But I mean, when you can see that raw emotion, and I think a lot of people who are, fed up with the anecdotal stories, as they're called these days, the anecdotal eyewitness testimony. I mean, yes, the brain isn't going to remember absolutely everything 100% to a T. But if it remembers 70, 80, 90% of what happened, 95%, I think we're doing pretty good there. And sure. I don't think a lot of people who rip these people for their anecdotal stories really understand or convey the emotions that many people go through. And it's not just about lights in the sky. This is about something a little bit different. About, as you said, we got missing time here. We got missing time. She doesn't know what's happened with her family. She's feeling guilty right now because what did she put her family through? And exactly. that's hard on someone. And
yeah, like she felt assaulted. And being assaulted by something invisible or something that right. you can't explain rationally to a police officer or whatever you need to do in certain situations when you are assaulted by something physical, meaning another person, they don't have an outlet. But to feel that feeling of assault or being taken advantage of or mm-hmm. However that person is feeling about the experience, I can't imagine. You know what I mean? I haven't had missing time. I haven't felt assaulted by any of my experiences,
Mm-hmm. Have you been taken?
I don't think so.
See, I have.
Okay.
And I can tell you there are experiences that I will share with the audience, and there are experiences that I just don't feel comfortable in discussing outside of me.
Yeah.
And there's very few times that has happened, and I think it's
lonely. That's got to be a lonely feeling for some of those experiences, right?
It is. But when you look at it, you're trying to protect yourself. You're trying to protect yourself. And people who experience this, they're not trying to do anybody harm. They just have been to the point of, this has happened to me. I got a majority of the population that's not going to believe me. A portion of that wants me to go into a mental institution. I could lose my job over this. I could lose my family or my friends over this. And that is a lot of responsibility when you build up your life as an experiencer. Because these events, whether it's, and I'm not talking seeing, a bright light in the sky. I'm saying when you get downright and personal with ghosts or Sasquatch or alien abduction, when it gets real, man, and I'm sure the witnesses have told you this, or at least you recognize this, it affects every aspect of your life.
Every single aspect. It's unimaginable on how much it affects every single aspect of their life. And I think I was telling you before, like there are some commonalities when it comes to their explanations of their encounter, meaning the abduction process or waking up and they're on something, like on some sort of table or whatever. The one thing that has been the biggest common factor is the living with a life-changing event that you don't feel like you can talk about and how that weighs on the psyche. That's so common constantly. And if I can be somebody in their life, even just for a moment, to give them a kind, non-judgmental ear, I'll do it all day, every day. Even if I think they're lying to me, because I definitely have spoken to some liars, but they're either lying because they have their own mental health concerns happening. Maybe they think they're going to get famous from it, or maybe there's some other X factor that I'm not aware of. But I want that to give that person the benefit of the doubt to be heard. What I do with the information after that is, my own business. If, am I going to pursue it and put it in my book or something like that? Typically not. But to give everybody that kind, non-judgmental ear, I think is so important. And I think there's a lot of researchers out there, or especially authors, or maybe people that are doing documentaries that are kind of not doing that. They might not have the experiencer's best interest at heart sometimes. Give me that information so I can put this out. But what happens after? You know what I mean? There's got to be some follow-up, and there's got to be, some sort of comfort and care, or at least give them options for something. Like if you're not going to follow up personally,
right,
at least, point them in the right direction for some sort of help,
Lynn Wallington, our weekend host, she is actually starting an experiencers group for our channel. For our listeners who have gone through, things they can't explain. And you know what? It's starting to pick up for her. There's a lot of people who really understand that they need some help. Quick question here from Jeremy about the Allagash abductions. Before we got about 3 minutes to go here before we go to break, but I wanted to get this in. Maybe before you get into your thoughts on this, explain to our audience what the Allagash abductions are.
Yeah, it's a lot to explain in 3 minutes. So a really condensed version of it. 4 friends from Massachusetts, they came up to Maine to do some fishing for the week. They were in college at the time, and I think it was spring break, and they came up to Maine to be in the wilderness for a couple of weeks, something like that. And they all saw this UFO on the first or second night, and other people in the camping area saw this UFO up in the sky. A couple of nights later, they're doing some night fishing. They light a big fire on the beach so they can make their way back after they're done night fishing. So while they're night fishing, they again see a UFO. It's just the 4 of them. They're in 2 separate canoes, 2 per canoe. And the UFO kind of descends and starts chasing them. The next thing they know, they're up in this UFO, and experiments galore happen to these guys. Samples are taken, blood, semen, all that stuff. And the next thing they know, they're back in their boats, and they come up to shore, and the big log fire that they built is now down to embers. And they're like, what the heck happened? Now, the part about the abduction, they didn't remember that for years. Years went by before they knew anything happened. They just remember going to fish. They saw a UFO, and then their log fire was down to embers, and they didn't understand what happened. And I can get into the aftermath afterwards.
Well, we got 2 minutes left. So, what do you?
I did a good job there.
You were speed reading there, man. It was awesome.
So one of the guys started having these really intense dreams of being surrounded by aliens, and he felt that it was affecting him medically. He started having seizures, and he was attributing it to these really intense dreams, and that something more than what he remembers happened that night when they were out in their canoes. So he sought out somebody for help, and that's where some of these guys went to a MUFON conference back in the day, and they met up with this gentleman named, is it Ray Fowler? I think it was Ray Fowler. And he put him in touch with a hypno-regression therapist. So all 4 guys have hypno-regression therapy. And then that's when all 4 of them started remembering these really intense UFO and alien encounters of being abducted.
They got the bad guys. They got the bad guys.
Right.
They didn't get the peace, love, and light is what you're saying.
Right. It was pretty intense, and then one of the 4 guys years later came out and said it was all a hoax, and a lot of people I honestly don't think anybody believes him. He was saying that it was all a hoax, and they were just trying to make some money from it. And, they didn't build this big fire that they said they did. It was just a small fire that they built, and that's why it went out, when they got back. And And but I guess come to find out, this gentleman started having irrational behavior throughout the year. Sure, we'll wait till after.
You know, we're going to get to this story. This is a great alien abduction story that we're going to continue, the Allagash abductions, with our guest tonight, Nomar Slevik, on Spaced Out Radio. What a great night of experiencer talk and stories. You can check out Nomar's books at slevikstore.company.site. We continue with Spaced Out Radio right after this. Stay tuned. You know what? Though? The problem that I have with that guy coming out and saying it was all a hoax is every skeptic who never wanted to believe that story now says, see, I told you it was a hoax. And in the meantime, the guy is probably doing it because he's tired of everything that's gone on. You know, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that when we come back.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah.
And Kim asked a question, and it was just one guy, Kim.
Yeah.
All the other three stand their ground. One or two of them were actually art majors, and one of them drew a comic book about their experiences, and you can find it on eBay and stuff. I have a copy of it, but it's a cool thing to have. It's a comic, written and illustrated by one of the experiencers. So pretty cool stuff.
Right on. Right on. You having fun so far?
Yeah, this is fun. Laura is saying something here. Something strange in the sky. Oh, yeah. She's talking about my appearance on Creepy Unsolved. That was a good talk, too. Dylan has a fun show to go on and talk all this stuff.
Very nice.
Man, you had Connor on recently. He's amazing, isn't he?
He's a great guy. Hi, Gorgeous Amber's Paraworld. I hope you got power again. Yeah, Connor's a great kid, man. I wish I had that kid's energy.
Oh, my God. It's amazing. And his positivity. I mean, I guess I do have his positivity. Outwardly, inwardly, I hate everything. I hate myself, but
oh, yeah.
Outwardly, inside and out, this kid is amazing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Jeremy, it's cold in Maine, dude.
Yeah, Connor's a kid that really lives every minute to its fullest and appreciates every minute. Is that a Burbs shirt or Burbs movie shirt?
Yeah.
Very nice. Thanks, Donnie Cho. I appreciate the second super chat here, man. Thank you so much, Donnie. By the way, roll call. I'm seeing a lot of new faces in here. Roll call. Where is everybody from? I always like to know where our people are from. Let me know if you don't mind, please. Jason Pearl, good to see you. Sorry?
People are talking about The Burbs now. Yeah, it's a great movie. Yeah, we got Connecticut, Baltimore, cool. Wisconsin.
Nice.
Raven
and Ryan. Raven is Ryan. You're in Dallas. Cool.
Kansas, Idaho.
Tennessee.
Oregon.
Idaho. Ohio. California. Hi, John Brown. How are you, man?
Mount Rainier. Cool.
Illinois.
Nicole in Illinois, you've been hearing about those Chicago Mothman?
Sensational Sherry, you got to go in the other chat room. Alabama, Alaska. Who's in Alaska? Oh, Shadows, you're in Valdez, Alaska. Very cool. Very cool, man.
West Virginia, nice.
When you drive down through British Columbia to get to the Washington border, you have to drive right by SOR headquarters, just so you know. Jeff A., good to see you. JCL, Ohio. The gorgeous Anastasia has returned. Mount Rainier.
World Bigfoot Radios in Neptune. That's cool.
Yeah. Avi May. And Ryan, are you in Mission, BC? Ryan Middleton, Mission, BC. Is that where you are? Grand Holland is in Brisbane, Australia. I love it. Love Bullhead City, Arizona for River Dogma. Thank you for coming. Who's in Niagara Falls? Oh, Sherry's in Niagara Falls. Salt Spring Island for the Michael Leger. The Michael Leger, the creator of my beautiful gnome right here. He made that out of wood and sent it to me.
Oh, that's amazing.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, I love this. Love that gnome. That's why it sits right there. And Acreon from Brazil. Very cool, Acreon. I had no idea. Colorado for Scary Gary. Oh, yeah, that is Scary Gary is Thin Lizzie's hubby. Ryan, I didn't know you were in Mission. I lived in Mission for 15 years, man, before I moved up here. Very cool. All right, here we go, everyone. Like 5 seconds. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including Rockin' Out to Bumblefoot, reading up on Shirky Poo's Newswire, checking out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. For the final time tonight, we have Nomar Slevik coming on in. We're talking experiencers all night long, and we have been talking about the Allagash abductions. And before we bring him back on, let's give his website where all his books are, including Granite Skies, Otherworldly Encounters, A Strange Trilogy. It's at slevikstore.company.site. Nomar, it's been a pleasure having you here tonight, man. I absolutely have had so much fun with you.
Yeah, it's been fun. Been fun telling stories.
Right before the break, you were talking about how one of the characters in the Allagash abductions all of a sudden came out of nowhere saying, it was all a hoax. I got a problem with this, and let me explain why. Because a lot of these people who have these experiences are traumatized, and they can't handle the pressure, the criticism, the skepticism, the people continually pointing in the face, you're a liar, this didn't happen. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to say, we hoaxed it. And the minute you say that, everybody from the skeptics to those who are questioning it say, see, we told you. And in the meantime, the rest of the group is thrown under the bus.
Yeah.
Take it from here.
Yeah, it's tough. So before he came out with that hoax stuff, he was doing appearances with the other folks that had the encounters at conventions, and sometimes he'd have his own one-off appearance somewhere. And his behavior started to get erratic, and then it started to get violent. And he ended up getting banned from a few different conventions due to his behavior. And it wasn't long after that where he came out and started talking about everything being a hoax. And like you were saying, that makes them look bad. It makes the field look bad. It's really easy for skeptics to jump on that, especially for this type of story that has really been, it's a legendary story. It was originally covered on Unsolved Mysteries, and the four guys went on Joan Rivers back when she had a show. So this is something that's been out there for quite a while, almost up there with the Travis Walton case. And I think that he is suffering from some sort of mental health issue because of the actual encounters, and he's lashing out. And obviously it's not good what he's doing. And honestly, I'm not sure of a latest update. I'm aware of an update as of like 2016, 2017 when I wrote about it. So I don't know if they have, made up or if he's recanted anything. But I think there's some mental health concerns there where he, especially with the violent behavior and being banned and then coming out and saying that stuff. So it's too bad what's happening there. But two of the guys are brothers, and they are always making appearances to this day. They usually go to the Exeter UFO festival that happens every year in Exeter, New Hampshire. So they're still actively, giving talks and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Well, I can tell you this. The pressures that a lot of experiencers feel. Have you ever talked to any experiencers and maybe share a story or two? Doesn't matter if it's UFOs, cryptids, ghosts, where they have been so traumatized by this, they've literally lost everything, their friends, their job, and they're trying to dig out of this their own moral rut in order to try and figure out how to get happy in life again?
Maybe not all of those aspects where they've lost everything, but they've certainly lost some things here or there and really deteriorating mental health. But Mike Stevens is the one that affected me the most. He's the gentleman I wrote about in Granite Skies. So with his experiences, it's been lifelong encounters. They have not been fun encounters. They're the bad guys types of abductions and experiences. And it all culminated to a few years ago. I believe he was 39. He might have been 40, but I believe he was 39. And for a while, actually until very recently, Mike was homeless. And he was sleeping in the woods one night, and he was scrolling through Facebook. And he decided that he'd had enough, and he started to develop a plan to end his life. And it was really brave of him, in my opinion, to share this aspect of his story. And it's honestly one of the most important aspects of his story to share. He had lost all hope, and he literally planned everything. He was going to buy his favorite alcohol. He was going to take some sleeping pills, and he made the plan to the way he was going to end his life was to hang himself. He picked out the spot, and he picked out the day that it was going to happen. Fast forward a couple days, he's got his plan in place. He's laying down, it's dark, he's in the woods, and he's scrolling through Facebook again. And he comes upon this post that says, "Rest in peace." And it's got one of his friends' names next to it. It blew his mind. He's like, this has to be a joke. So now he goes to the friends page, and he's scrolling through all of the "rest in peace. I can't believe this happened. This is terrible." Come to find out, he has a friend that lost their life to a medical issue, and it devastated him. He immediately started doing the friend thing. He was close to this guy, and he started doing the friend thing where he reached out to the widow and was starting that whole process. And now he's at the funeral. Obviously it's sad. And he's looking around at everybody and how emotional everybody is. And he thinks to himself, if there's even just one person that I'm going to make feel this way, if I end my own life, I don't think I can do it. And that started his road to recovery. He's not 100% by any means yet. He's probably not even 50% yet, but he's trying. He's got hope. Before hopeless, now hope. And it was this tragedy that took him away from the edge of suicide. And he shared that with the widow. And the widow allowed me to share that part of the story in the book. Yeah, which is amazing. So just to see him get to the brink and was able to pull himself back. And boy, it gets tough to talk about. And again, he's not, he's like 50, or he's like the rest of us, you know what I mean? Like he still has some really dark thoughts sometimes, and he suffers from depression and anxiety. And he and I actually check in with each other, and we kind of have this pact where if it gets that bad, like if I'm on the edge myself, I trust myself now. Because even though I struggle with this stuff, I feel like I've done a lot of work to get myself to a place where, not that I'm happy, I'm certainly not happy, but I trust myself now that I'll call somebody if I'm on that edge. Even if it's not Mike, we have this pact now that we will reach out if we're on that edge. And I think that's awesome.
That is good. That is very, very good. And, you need that pact, you need that trust, you need that ability to do that, especially the strength. With experiencers like Mike and others that you have spoken to over the years, is there a commonality that you have figured out, whether it's the anxiety, depression, whether it's, instability, trust, more on an emotional level? Have you figured anything out?
Well, I haven't, 100% figured anything out, but what I hear a lot is there's trust issues, and there's, it's like this growing concern in the field of, not growing because it's been around forever, but it's being talked about more, is being misunderstood, the fear of being misunderstood, or to have your words taken the wrong way. That is a really high stress point for a lot of people, and really contributes to the trauma of what you're dealing with. And so the fear of being misunderstood is causing people to not speak. And then all of the stuff, by holding all that stuff in, that's doing all this other damage, and then becomes a snowball of, PTSD and all this other trauma. So again, not that I've figured out a way to fix anybody or anything. The best thing I can do is hear them out, hopefully point them in the right direction, and share that they're not alone, to them and to other people.
Very
I don't know if that really answers your question, but
it did a little bit. But I'll expand the question. People who are experiencers seem to have a common tie together. Okay, and it always seems to lead down this little bit of a darker road, because the loss of friends, the loss of jobs, the loss of trust issues, being victimized and not having anybody believe who your victim is. So that's kind of the road that I was going on with that, if you had noticed any patterns.
The patterns is what you really just explained. It's the falling off of these things that were, flourishing in their life and has since gone away, and that's really, again, that kind of goes back to their catalyst for PTSD, anxiety, depression isn't the normal catalysts that other people have, which is maybe some sort of sexual assault, or maybe poor upbringing, or, whatever is happening. Their catalyst is extraterrestrial in nature, and they're still going down these same dark roads and dark thoughts and things as people that have a different catalyst, or a normal catalyst, if you will. So I don't know. I guess that's my thoughts on it.
Have you dealt with a lot of experiencers who, when taken, have come back wearing their clothes backwards, missing clothes, someone else's clothes?
Not someone else's clothes, but clothes, either parts missing or completely naked. But the clothes are still around, like in a ball, like on the floor, in the bedroom, something like that. Also clothes being backwards, either a shirt or even pants being put on backwards, or boxers being put on backwards, or, something like that. But I think the one thing that wasn't so prevalent, at least in a lot of the older books that I was reading about abductions is talking about feeling, people not realizing that they had been abducted yet, but they're waking up like they had run a marathon and they're just exhausted. And they don't understand because they just remember going to bed at a certain time and waking up at a certain time. But now they're exhausted and they need a vacation from their sleep patterns, and just how uncanny that must feel. If you haven't started exploring what that could be yet, just how crazy that's got to be. What kind of feeling that is, because sometimes I wake up really tired. I'm sure we all have, but I also remember getting up to go pee or maybe the cat was doing something. So I woke up and, but for people to believe that they've been sleeping all night, but they wake up and they're exhausted and, there may be a weird shirt thing or maybe there's a mark somewhere, but you can always explain that stuff away. Oh, I must have been tossing and turning and I bumped myself, or that's why my shirt got turned around or whatever. It's really easy when you're in the middle of it to try to explain the stuff away to not make it weird. You're trying to rationalize everything,
Oh, very, very much so. And, some of the stories I've heard, like John Carty, who's been on this show before, he has some amazing footage and experiences in his apartment in Philadelphia. And his first experience when he was like 15, 16 years old, he watched the Greys walk into his bedroom. And when he woke up, he wasn't in the bedroom anymore. He was on his couch. And his basketball shorts that he was wearing were now backwards, and he had no shirt on. And he's like, I know I was in my bedroom. Like, that's the last memory he had, right? And
when the first Conjuring, the second Conjuring movie came out, and there's that scene where the little girl kind of wakes up and she's like on the floor in the living room. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember that scene, but she had started to tie herself to her bed because she didn't want to be taken, some other place. But it's really cool the way they film the scene because she's in her bed. Then all of a sudden she's like kind of kerplunked on the floor in the movie. And it really sparked the memory of numerous experiencers that I've talked to where they just, it's one moment and then the next moment, it's a split second to them. And they're in a new place, but they've woken up, like it jolted them out of their sleep, There's still no memory of lights or beings or anything like that. But they're in their bed. Now they're on the floor in the living room or they're under the kitchen table or something like that. And, again, to live with that has got to be insanely uncanny if you're not thinking extraterrestrial and how to, to explain that away, it makes me think about where sleepwalking came from. You know what I mean? And is that a part of explaining things away or, is it a little bit of both? Like it is a real phenomenon, but it's also a thing that experiencers use to explain away what's been happening to them,
What's the weirdest thing that's happened to you?
The weirdest thing that's happened to me? Okay. I was investigating an old funeral home. And I was outside of this funeral home. There was the garage door where the hearses used to go. And I had some team members inside and I was outside. And this had been like the 10th time that we had investigated the place. And what we were trying to do was finally like rid the place of spirits, but we're not experts in that. So we actually brought some people in to do some saging and to do some blessing and to do some salt stuff. And so they were kind of doing their thing. And what they ended up doing was trying to create a path for these spirits to literally walk out of the home. So we left like 3 feet of open space that was not salted or blessed or whatever, where they had to be kind of forced to be corralled to go out of. And when I say, spirits and stuff, like after investigating there like 10 times, we just kept getting different names to the point where there could be over 50 spirits there. And again, this is a former funeral home, so that kind of makes sense. It had since been turned into 4 different apartment buildings in the same building. So I've got team members on the inside, and they've got some EMF detectors on the floor of this path that we've created. And I'm on the outside because I want to see if I can capture anything on camera or see anything. So we got our walkie-talkies, And they're telling me, yep, this K2 just went off. And then, 3 feet down the line, this next K2 came off, almost like they were walking down a line to walk out. K2 would go off, K2, K2. And then it was out the garage door. So they're like, if something's exiting, it's exiting right now. So I would, watch that garage door to see if I could see anything. So at one point, I saw these 2 white legs. It was just legs, no feet, no upper body, step out. And the legs kind of turned towards me, almost like whatever it was saw me. And it stood like that for a second, and then it just kind of dissipated. It didn't blink out or anything. It was there, and then I stopped seeing it, type of thing. And at one point, there's this field that's attached. It's like the backyard, and it's all grass that's attached to this property. And if I'm looking here, I'm looking at that garage door. And if I look this way, I'm looking at the grass. So they're telling me all these things are, the K2s are going off and stuff. And then I look in the middle of the yard, and there's this black triangle in the middle of the yard. It almost like it was a pine tree, like a juvenile pine tree in the middle of the yard. And it's kind of swaying like that. But it's black, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure there wasn't a tree there. It's maybe, I don't know, 50, 60 yards in front of me. And I'm looking at this thing. So I have a night vision camera, and I bring that up. It's not in the camera. I bring it down. I see it. Bring the camera back up. I don't see it. So I radio the people inside. I'm like, hey, I'm seeing something out in the field, and I'm going to walk towards it. I don't know if it's a tree or whatnot. I just know I can't capture it on camera. And they're like, okay, be careful. So I start walking towards it. I walk maybe 20 yards away or so, or I've walked 20 yards towards it. I put the camera up again. No, still can't see it. But I start getting this overwhelming, ominous feeling. Like what I'm approaching is getting angry and wants me to stop approaching. And if I don't, I'm getting the feeling that something's going to happen to me. But, I'm, I think I'm somebody who's tough in the paranormal sense. Anybody can beat me in a fight, but in the paranormal sense, I think I'm tough. And so I want to keep approaching this thing. So now I'm pretty close to where it is. I'm probably 20 yards away from it now. So I've traveled like 40, 45 yards. And the thing's still in front of me. I'm still feeling this ominous feeling. I've got goosebumps, and then it blinks out. It's not there anymore. And in talking to the team, they kind of thought that maybe I challenged it enough, and then it bounced. It's like, okay, he's meeting the challenge. I'm just a bully that's not tough, and they blinked out and didn't want to deal with me or something like that, But that was one of the craziest things to not have something in that yard, then to see something in the yard, and it looked like a black triangle. I really haven't heard of ghosts looking like black triangles, or like some small pine tree or something in the middle of a yard. And to get that overwhelming, ominous feeling, like I could tell something was trying to scare me, like it was a bully going, like that or something. That was weird. It was really weird.
For me, I'll make my story quick. We only got 90 seconds. I went to bed one night after the show, and I was literally lying in bed, and I fall asleep kind of on my side in my stomach, and I'm always facing to the left. And I always usually sleep with my legs out from underneath the covers. And this was summertime, and all of a sudden I feel my right leg get picked up. And I was real tired, and I remember turning my head. I didn't even see what it was. I turned my head, and I yelled at this thing. I'm like, come on. I'm just getting into a deep sleep here. I'm tired. Don't bug me tonight. And all of a sudden, my leg was put right back down, and everything disappeared, man. I still laugh at that one. 1 minute left, my friend. Nomar, I got to tell you, we got to bring you back. I absolutely love your stories and the way you explain. You've been phenomenal. Tell everybody where they can find your books.
Wow, thank you so much. That's high praise. I appreciate that. Slevikstore.company.site. I also do a lot of other things. I make documentaries. I have my own podcast. I actually make music. If you want to check everything out, you can go to allmylinks.com/Slevik. allmylinks.com/Slevik. That gets you to my books and all this other stuff that I do. But if you want to buy a book, that would be amazing. This is something I do full time. And it is my day job. So slevikstore.company.site. I would love any support you could throw my way by getting a book. And I'll sign it and throw some goodies in there for you, too.
Beautiful, my friend.
Thank you so much.
What a pleasure to get to know you. And I thank Bree on our booking team for this one. This was a pleasant surprise, and I love it when that happens. And I just feel like we got a lot in common, and we'll definitely bring you back definitely this year. Awesome. Just awesome show. Nomar Slevik on the show tonight. Go support him. Get his books. Talk to him about your experiences. Coming up next, we head into the swamp, followed up by the UFO Report with Fedora John. Hour 3 of Spaced Out Radio is coming up next. Great show, bud. Great show.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it, man.
Give you a few claps there. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, this was fun. You're very easy to talk to. Nicole, yes, that's right, from Maine. Yeah, you're very easy to talk to, so that's awesome. I'm sure you have guests on. You have a ton of guests on, and they have also been on a ton of other shows. And, I've been on my fair. I would say I've done hundreds of shows, and you are one of the few that really makes it comfortable and easy to talk to. And that's something that somebody who's getting interviewed it's really a big deal. So thank you for that.
I appreciate you, my friend. I appreciate you. I'm going to let you go because I got to get ready for hour 3 here.
Sure.
But let's stay in touch. And
Absolutely.
If you ever need to talk experiences or anything, you got my phone number.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And thanks everybody in chat. Take care.
All right. Take care. Nomar Slevik, everyone. God, what a great guy. What a great guy. This is the way I like to end my week on nights like this. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Candy Romero in Vegas, by the way. I need you, because I know you're going to the Vegas party, since you live there, to go, if you're going to the Vegas party for anyone and you haven't registered yet, go to info@spacedoutradio.com. Leave your name and your size so we can get a gift bag together for you. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So we need to I need to know how many people are there so I know what to bring down with us. April 22nd to 24th. So it's going to be a good time. Rose Demaray, how are you? Looking good tonight. The lovely Nikki, how are you, my sweet? Much love to you. Much love to you. All right. Yeah, that was just a great guest. Great guest. Mm-hmm. Very happy right now. Very happy. Dave's a happy guy. Happy guy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. E. Niles is coming to Vegas. Oh, yeah, there he is. He's bringing a strong beard and ball cap game. I can tell right now he's headed to the poker table. I can totally tell. He's going to the poker table. You don't have that look right there. That doesn't say, screw you, your Jack 3 offsuit. You ain't bluffing me out of my pocket, Jacks. I get that look. I understand that. Always Jennifer Richardson, Elizalde. Uh-huh. That's right, Super Duke. You were on twice. You made the week, man. You made the week. Uh-huh. Super Duke. His twin is Michael Anthony of Van Halen, or formerly of Van Halen. Next time, Duke, I'm bringing up a picture. You two are doppelgangers. The Vegas party, Kim Jellin, is April 22nd to 24th. We going to have fun. We gonna have fun. Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. Oh, River Dogma, you're coming. Sweet. Make sure you get your name in to info@spacedoutradio.com, man. So we can add you to the list. I know the website says put your phone number down. I don't need your phone numbers. I just need your 100% confirmation and your size. That's what I need. We've got 90 seconds here, people. I better get Shirky Poo's news ready. Where did I put Shirky Poo here? Shirky Poo, where are you? One. All right. Thank you so much to Dry Toast, Donnie ×2, Jeremy, Thomas, and Rex for the amazing super chats. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show. And here we go, everyone. We're going to get going right now in like 5 seconds.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. What is this? Cacography. Cacography is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night, right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Let's head over to the swamp, where our main man, Swamp Dweller, from the great YouTube channel, tells us another creepypasta spooky story.
Hi, Spaced Out Radio listeners. This is Swamp Dweller. It's time for your nightly dose of spookiness on the show. If you have an interesting encounter or a spooky story that you would like to share, be sure to submit them in at swampdweller.net. You can also find our YouTube channel at youtube.com/swampdwellerreads. Now, let's chill out, relax, and together, let's enter the swamp. In Roscommon County, Michigan, a few years back, I had what I believed to be a Wendigo or Dogman encounter. I was biking down an old, quiet 2-track near my home, scoping out 100 acres of land that had been lowered immensely in price. It was 1 in the afternoon when I caught sight of a figure at about 10 to 12 feet tall, taking roughly 3 steps and about 50 yards ahead of me across the property line. I quickly stopped my bike, gazing ahead for a better look. The figure had backwards hind legs. Its neck was strange and its eyes were a distinct yellow. The neck was so long it looked as though the thing could swallow an entire human in it. When it walked, there was no up and down movement, but more like a gliding. This figure seemed spiritual, not physical, and it soon dissipated. I went to check for tracks, but I found none. The land eventually sold, and when it did, I was asked to check out an RV someone was selling. The land the RV was on was the same land I witnessed the creature 6 months prior. Seeing this made all the memories of the creature flood back. I wanted to ask the elderly owners if they'd noticed anything strange while out here, but I also was there on business, so I had to be careful in my wording. Knocking on the couple's door, they opened up. I told them I knew the land well and was curious if they'd seen any wolves or wildlife in the area. The couple smiled and went on to a heavy rebuke of wolves. I then changed the subject and went inside the RV to find the walls covered in wallpapers of wolves and pictures of wolves everywhere. There were also many references to Indians and dream catchers. I never bid buy the RV, but I believe what I saw 6 months prior was a Wendigo or a dogman in spiritual form.
My story takes place 4 years ago, when I was just 14. I wanted to go hunting out on our property, which is about 370 acres in total. It took some convincing, but my old man finally agreed I could go hunting on my own. When it was time to go, I was stoked. I grabbed my molly bag and crossbow before jumping onto my dirt bike and setting off on my hunt. It was about 8 in the morning when I got to my grandpa's property and saw all the no trespassing signs. I ignored these and sprayed dope piss to mask my scent before rushing off to my favorite tree stand. I'm on my way up the tripod when I suddenly hear a loud thump. A tree fell, but thinking it was coincidental, I continue my climb. Another tree soon falls and I stop, actually worried and looking into the distance. Suddenly, there was a high-pitched scream far off. I couldn't describe it too well as I'm deaf and I have an implant in my ear that helps me hear. It was when I was almost at the top, I see this monster bug running for its life. I quickly slide down and grab my crossbow when I suddenly see this huge dog-like figure staring me in the eyes. It's now standing on its back legs. I was too afraid to move when my great-grandfather shows up on an ATV and yells at me to get on. I hop on, and he and I leave. Later on, my hunting pal, I'll keep his name private, mentioned to me a story about a black dog-like figure that would prowl the woods. I believe it was the Dogman. If you ever encounter one, just run.
All right, we say thank you to Mr. Swamp Dweller for another amazing couple of stories here on the Swamp. A beautiful section. We go into the spookiness of creepypasta. Swamp Dweller, make sure you hit subscribe on his channel. But right now, it is time once again for the Unbiased UFO Report. And we bring in our good friend, the fedora-wearing John Hudson, for the Unbiased UFO Report, as we are going to kick things off with a little UFO talk here. John, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm having a great night. We had a great guest with Nomar Slevik, and wow, this guy, his stories that he told and the emotions, it was a great night of radio for us. Great night of radio.
No, totally agreed. No, totally agreed. No, and he was a cool guy, but it was fun listening to him, and it was a nice kind of fresh take on things. I really enjoyed it.
Me too, my friend. Me too. And for you, your evening?
Oh, doing good. I spent much of it enjoying the show, and the rest of it hanging out with my beautiful, awesome, brilliant little daughter. So
that's a good night. That's a good night. Anytime we could do that. All right, let's get right to it, my friend. Because 2022 could be turning into the turning point of UFOs. What do you think's going on here?
Well, the thing is that, this article, and I was just pulling it up because I wanted to check something on it again. And the thing that's interesting about this is that, okay, so to me, like, this is probably a debate that a lot of people are having right now, or a lot of people maybe had in December, right? Just like, hey, what's 22 going to bring to this community or to this movement or whatever you want to call it? But what really surprised me was the fact that a writer from space.com was writing it, and this was not a quick little piece. This is actually a pretty well thought out, a story that, doesn't once again, because this is essentially written for normal folks, right? For any of us who are in this field, who are, doing research, a lot of this information that you're going to get, is essentially old news to you, right? But it essentially goes through and it talks about some of the evidence. It specifically has a line that it calls out in the beginning saying that interest in UFOs continue to grow, both among scientists and government officials. So right off the very beginning of the article, they're trying to establish credibility that what they're talking about here are well thought out, even-minded, well-educated people that have professional backgrounds that are coming to these conclusions. So they're really trying to set a tone that says that, hey, this is official, or this is, authoritative in some ways, right? And so, it talks about essentially, the UFO versus the UAP phenomenon. It even talks about, Alpha Centauri. It talks about the UAP movement. It talks about the Navy videos. It talks about a coordinated event and the National Defense Act and the Gillibrand Amendment. I mean, it does a good job of essentially touching on. I mean, he even goes into a UFO detection and a Oumuamua. It's a pretty long, well thought out article that even offers some constructive criticism, talking about the lack of coordination, which is obvious, and it ends with challenges. So it's a well thought out article. I really encourage everyone to read it. I'm kind of surprised that it came out in space.com. It's a well-researched article, and even though, those of us who are voice researchers may not learn anything in it, I highly recommend you read it because it's got some good information in it, and it's a good thing to share with other people.
Well, you know what? I encourage people to read it too. One of the things that I found is once again, it's a very scientific type article. If you are looking for that type of information, it doesn't get into a lot of experiencers or anything. But the fact that space.com is taking this story and not with a grain of salt. There was no anecdotes, there was no puns, there was no, shots over the bow that a lot of people like to make fun of this topic. I liked that about it.
It was like a normal article.
Yeah.
It was like an article you'd see about a real topic, right?
No, very
right?
true.
I mean, I hate to phrase it that way, but that's how, that's kind of how, I think that's what you're referring to, and I completely agree.
I mean, there's not a lot of new information. It's a lot of recycled information, but the fact that space.com is carrying it, I think that's the weight of the story, John.
Yeah. And that's the thing is that I want I want more mainstream periodicals to look at all the research that folks like us do as a buffet. And go ahead and pick through that buffet and pick the items that you think are going to have the most impact to your reader base and use that information. And to me, that's the right way to do it. And so I encourage every mainstream, publication out there to basically pour through all of our research and just grab what you think will be passionately, appreciated by your readers.
Absolutely. Did anything catch you off guard in that article?
I would say I was a little surprised that that they brought up detection. I would say that's the only thing that kind of gave me kind of a second take. I was like, and it wasn't that there was anything significant written about detection, but I was just I was kind of like just going through the list and like, wait, detection. That's a more aggressive. Outbound sort of procedure, So that surprised me. Yourself?
And one of our former guests, Dr. Michael Masters, professor of anthropology at Montana Tech University, says the human time traveler's model to explain UFOs has been gaining traction over the last couple of years. And he says, I think people are starting to realize that this makes a lot of sense in the context of how these ships operate, how they can achieve such incredible accelerations and decelerations if they are manipulating space-time in their own reference frame in and around these craft. And if we can take seriously the descriptions of beings seen in association with them, how they are ubiquitously described in such human terms regarding their behavior, technology, and morphological form. I mean, what Michael is saying here, and Michael's a big fan of this show, he is basically saying, look...
And I'm a big fan of his, too.
Yeah,
I love his theory about time travel and abductions, yeah.
But what he's saying here, John, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is, look, we see the spaceships. We need to know what's inside. Who's controlling that? And if there are beings controlling this, how are they doing it? Where are they from? And we got to start looking into this aspect that we could be being visited by an extraterrestrial presence.
Oh, you're just all those kids that wanted to open your presents early. Can't you just wait and be surprised?
No.
Sorry. I know. I mean, no. I mean, I don't know.
You jerk. No.
No, I mean the thing is that, and the problem is that you start talking about what we're talking about now, and it's fun, but it leads to a darker aspect, which is what is the intent, right? What is the intent that these guys actually have, right? So it's yeah. I mean, I know I agree with him. I think it's a very challenging issue.
All right, let's move on to topic number 2 tonight, which is Linda Moulton Howe appeared on Kurt J. Mungel's Theory of Everything. And I'm a little, it doesn't surprise me that Kurt J. Mungel, who's a great podcaster, by the way, on Theories of Everything, you can sign up for him on YouTube. What surprises me is how few interviews Linda Moulton Howe has been doing, and the fact that she finally, yes, she has her own YouTube channel, she does her own studies and interviews, everything like that, but she's not interviewed by a lot of people these days. She's kind of pulled back from that scene.
Yes, and perhaps we saw some indication of why. Because essentially, I thought it was a very good interview. I will say this, that because of Linda's style, it forced Kurt to completely alter his style. Kurt, one of the things I love about him is that he's a quick thinker, and so he typically kind of gets us firing back and forth. Linda is a kind of a long-winded, verbose sort of creature, and so she gave these incredibly thoughtful answers to things. But what it meant was that Kurt wasn't able to get in his kind of normal, 10,000 questions in, right? And but it went well. I mean, it went really well, and I thought she gave really good answers, and it was all going fine. And then it's like toward the very end of the interview, she mentioned that her battery was going to die, and so they he tried to get her to change batteries and come back, but she said it'd been 2.5 hours, and she was tired, and so he's like, okay, well, how about 3 more questions? And she's like, well, 1 more question. He's like, okay, fine. And he asked a question, unfortunately, from Steve Cambrian, whatever his name is, from Truth Seekers, and it was and I was a little worried because it was his standard kind of try to poke the bear sort of approach, where he basically said that he found some photograph on her website that had been lifted from a video game, and he told her about it, and she never removed the picture from the website, and he wanted to know why, right? And so it's like, really, this is like the appropriate time to be asking that question. But anyway, she said that she didn't know what he's talking about, and which is probably true. And he said, you know what, that's fine. Let's just move on to another question. So he gets on to the next question, and unfortunately, I think that question and the negotiation to keep her on for this last question kind of put her into a bit of a defensive mindset. And the next question actually came from unidentified celebrity review guys, and that was it was basically, I'm misquoting it, but it was something along the lines of for retractions that you've for any retractions you've had to make in the past, can you tell us about one of them, right? And and you word that correctly, and I think that's a really fine question to ask someone. Hey, can you tell us some time in the past where like something you really believed in just didn't end up working out, and then you had to deal with it. Like, how did you deal with it, right? Like, to me, like, that's a pretty reasonable question to ask. The way Kurt asked the question, and just because of the flow, she took real offense to it, and she got angry, and there was a very uncomfortable exchange, and they were both very professional and respectful of each other, but it was clear that she felt that he was trying, that she indicated that she felt that he was trying to catch her in something, that he was trying to get her in something, to trick her into saying something. And she was very upset, and the interview ended, and a lot of people said the interview ended early, and that wasn't the case because they were on their last question, so the interview was going to end anyway, and so that didn't really matter. But it was unfortunate that it ended on such a negative tone, and it was unfortunate that Kurt was Kurt took it pretty hard. He felt pretty bad about it, and because the last thing he wants is to make a guest feel like they're being attacked. And it was unfortunate the way the whole thing played out. But up until that last 5 minutes, it was an excellent interview.
Did she say anything new about Antarctica or about what's going on with Art's parts that she sold?
So she gave a few little tiny data points along the lines of TTSA and the CRADA that basically back up my hypothesis that I shared with you that we got feedback on, and basically and she basically phrased it a different way, but what I think will be interesting for people to listen to is she talks about the fact that there was all these attempts to be able to generate terahertz, the right level of terahertz radiation, or terahertz frequencies, and essentially there were several people that thought they could pull it off, and in the end all the private options failed, and it was the Army lab that did have the terahertz equipment, and so that was one of the main reasons why the parts went to the Army, was for that. But Linda, because she was so worried about getting the parts back because of the Army being involved, that's why she forced it to be a sale where she sold the parts as opposed to lending it, because she assumed that since the Army was now involved, she would never get the parts back. So that's the whole reason why that
makes
she
sense.
the payment for it. Yeah. But essentially, it wasn't anything specifically new, but it was nice. It was nice to get some details fleshed out, And so me personally, I have a much clearer picture of the story. And I didn't have confirmation that the parts that the Army was looking at were some of the same arts parts that she had.
Wow. Did she keep any of that arts parts for herself?
Yeah, no, she did, because basically with the exception of that the small piece that went to the Army, every other piece has been specifically lent and had to be returned. So, with the exception of a few small bits that she's given away over the years, the majority of that piece she still possesses. I mean, some of it's loaned out at the moment, but I don't know if this was this. The problem is that I don't. I'll be honest here. I don't follow Linda very closely because I've had challenges with some of her sources in the recent years, and so I don't know the exact details of how it played out. Yeah.
All right, we're going to continue on with the fedora wearing John Hudson when we come back on Spaced Out Radio with the unbiased UFO report. John's stirring it up tonight. I love it. We'll be back with Fedora John. Final half hour of Spaced Out Radio's next. All right, we're clear, dude. That's good stuff right there, Fedora.
It was a fun interview of her. It really was. It was really unfortunate that it ended that way, because up to that point, I thought it was a great interview.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Yeah, and it's funny too. Is as just a quick side note, of all the interviews Kurt's done over the last year and a half or whatever, I haven't watched all of them, but I've watched a lot of them, and the only ones that I've seen go really, really south at this point now are the end of Linda Moulton Howe and Travis Walton. And I just think it's kind of funny that, like two of the most prominent UFO folks are like the two that, he struggled with. So. But I mean, the huge difference in that essentially almost all of the Travis Walton interview was painful to listen to. The interview with Linda Moulton Howe was actually a really nice interview. It was only the last 5 minutes or something that was uncomfortable.
Hello, Jessa Figmentation. I like the play on the name there. Welcome. Let's see here. Hi, this is Jessica. Welcome. A different name. Same person. Do we get a third name? No. No, we don't. Jason is wondering if you think James Webb Satellite is going to give us answers.
I'm honestly so freaking excited it hasn't blown up yet. I'm so thrilled it's still in one piece. I'm giddy that it's actually still alive. I was really worried about this one. I hate to admit it. I apologize to all the engineers involved. I should have had more faith in you folks. But man, I've been really worried about this one. I'm so giddy that it's still functional. At this point, as far as I'm concerned, everything else is icing on the cake.
On the next one for John Ramirez, do you mean UCS or UCR? It
was an unintended celebrity report. Yeah. It was a question from one of those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm hungry.
Yeah, I've really discovered that if unless I'm like burning a lot of calories, like doing a lot of working out or a lot of physical activity, I pretty much have to be hungry most of the time.
I'm thinking of trimming the mustache up. Bring it to about there. Just a nice little slim handlebar there.
Okay. You realize that when you're doing that, you're actually.
I know. I was like, I'm watching
like
myself.
You're like, are you trying to shave it unevenly?
About there. Thinking about it. Thinking about going a little bit higher on the mustache.
Well, just whatever you pick, just make sure you get a nice level. And
Oh yeah. It's getting hard to trim in here, you know. Ruger Luger, think there are alien hookers? Why not? Why not? You be our bait, buddy. You be our bait. It'll be fun.
I mean, one would have to think. I mean, if you assume that there's some like balance to the way societies are organized, I mean, technically there are alien guidance counselors out there. Think about how sad that role is.
Alien guidance counselors. All right, we got about 35 seconds. Nicole is from Planet Riza.
I think I've decided that all the abduction thing, Dave, is actually 3 boutique farm-to-table restaurants in space that are competing with each other.
Maybe.
And so they're just coming down, they're grabbing foods to make it fresh.
Hold on, buddy. Big thank you to Dry Toast, Donnie ×2, Jeremy, Thomas, Rex, and Tits McGee for the super chats tonight. Really, really appreciate the love. Here we go with the final half hour of tonight's show, everyone. We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Thank you so much for tuning us in. My name is Dave Scott. Let's take you home tonight. Want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with the unbiased UFO report. The fedora-wearing John Hudson is back. Now, John, you bring up an interesting part here because, you know, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of podcasts out there dealing with everything from cryptids to consciousness to UFOs and aliens and ghosts and paranormal, everything that you could think of. But you brought up a point on one from recently this week where you mentioned the tone of it can really turn an interview sour. Give us the breakdown.
Yeah, so this was another case of our friends over Celebrity Review that were involved, and they did what was for the most part a good interview of John Ramirez, and there was another gentleman involved, and I apologize, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but And essentially, and keep in mind that Michael
Mataluni.
Oh man, Mataluni, thank you. Is out for now. So he wasn't there. So and so basically, it should have been. I mean, that channel is known for being a safe place, right? A safe place for people to go where they're not going to feel attacked, and essentially I have no idea what was going on. I'm really baffled by what happened, but for some reason the tone that Rather was using was very acidic, and it was uncomfortable, and John reacted to it, and it got a little confrontational, and it was awkward, and it was hard to listen to, and it was the sort of thing where it was like the first 40 minutes of it are awkward and hard to listen to. And finally, others jump in and they kind of, get control of the interview again. And the problem is that if you listen to what was asked, I need to go through it again. But the last I looked at it, I couldn't pick out any words that Rather used that were wrong, or any question that he asked that should have been seen as out of bounds necessarily, right? I really believe, and this is my personal analysis, I really believe that it was his tone that was the issue. And so the problem is that now, so there was a lot of negativity thrown toward the show because of how this played out. You can see it in the comments and so forth. They had to do damage control in that they then very shortly afterwards came out with another show where they do analysis of their own show. And so there was definitely an attempt to get out in front of it. And to a certain degree, toward the end of the interview, they were kind of laughing about it a little bit and trying to kind of, lighten the mood a little bit, because there's no reason for it to be all, serious and everything, right? I mean, some people just have off days, right? I mean, it's like it could have just been having a bad day. I mean, who knows, right? But the point was that this was John Ramirez has not done many interviews. He's not going to do probably a whole lot of interviews. I believe his next interview is on Coast to Coast, and so it was cool for them to get him, and they basically they kind of blew the interview in a way, very much. I mean, for a lot of people they did, and it's really unfortunate because some people are going to read into what the questions were, and I don't think that had anything to do with it. I think it was all tone. I really do. I think it was all tone. But I'd love to hear what other people think.
There's a difficult task in doing an interview. I mean, for the majority of podcasters out there, they aren't professional broadcasters. All right? And they are doing this because they love the topic. And it doesn't matter what the topic is, whether it's UFOs or sports or baking or how to fix a car. All right, there's millions of podcasts out there and YouTube channels for everybody who just wants to have a voice. And that's the beautiful part of the entire social media medium. And at times, when you don't know how to interview someone, or an interview goes bad, and we've had them go bad on this show, the big thing that you always have to remember is the majority of the people here have secondary lives. The ones that pay their bills, the ones that are paying the rent, putting food on the table before you can get home and potentially live a dream of making it in broadcasting, one way or another. Some have that dream. The majority just like to do it for a hobby and be a part of something that is special to them. And I think that is perfect. But on the flip side, this is where, you've heard me go off on a number of times. And I'm not blaming Rather or Lou or Mike at UCR. Those are good people over there.
Oh, they work hard, and they put on a good show. They
put on a very good show, and like you said, they've never been a type of group to ruffle their feathers. And as I go forward, I will also say that we were very blessed to be asked to take part in their last Big Phone Home 2 that they did for UAP disclosure, and we've developed a real kinship and friendship with that show. And the point that I'm getting at when I go through this is, knowing those guys, it was probably a bad day. But the problem is, a lot of times, many people in the audience, and not to throw direction at the audience or blame at the audience, because you need a great audience in order to have a great show. But sometimes there are audience members out there who take things the wrong way, and the line of questioning the wrong way, and it affects what we're doing here. It really does.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Oh, no, it really does. It really, really does. Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't see the episode. I heard about it. I read about it on Twitter. And, I felt bad for Lou Jimenez and rather having to go on the defensive on Twitter. They really had to go on the defensive. And unfortunately, that goes with the line. That goes with the line. If you want to have a credible show, sometimes you're going to piss people off.
Well, and the thing is that people need to listen to it, right? Because, like, for example, for me, like, when I heard about it, when I went to listen to it, I wasn't expecting much. And I got to be honest with you, I was surprised. There was 2 or 3 times where Rather said something, I was like, I was shocked. I have to admit that. But the flip side is that I heard that the Theory of Everything interview went really bad too, and I listened to that one, and that wasn't anywhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be, right? So it's also, people need to judge these things on their own, right? But my concern is that it is still probably just like a bad day or something, right? And we all have them, and maybe we all need to get better at calling ourselves out and not doing stuff when we're in that state, But the thing is that people are going to read into the fact that it might have been the questions that were asked that Ramirez somehow doesn't want to answer, and they're going to do what you said. They're going to read too much into it, and it probably had nothing to do with it. It probably just was a bad day.
Could have been. Finally tonight, Salvador Pay going to be interviewed by Kurt.
Yes.
For people who don't know who Salvador Pay is, give us a breakdown.
Yeah, so basically, he's the one that basically wrote those papers, and basically, so the Navy patents that everyone has heard so much about, the Payas effect is what he coined. He's been interviewed kind of indirectly, and I don't think he's ever been interviewed live. I could be wrong on that. He's been a difficult person to interact with, partially because of his lack of interest, partially because he still has an active role, and essentially he's the one that basically is the author of those 3 Navy patents, the ones on a low inertial, basically all this really, really cool stuff, right? And essentially, and the thing is that, based on my knowledge of how a lot of this stuff works, his hypothesis is it's not out of the blue. It's derivative of a lot of previous work that was headed in this direction. And the thing is that, but a lot of people think the patents are complete BS, and a lot of people will call them out as BS. And the patent office pushed back on them. The CIO of the Navy had to jump in and say, no, look, we've tested this. We have prototypes. We've shown this, right? And so, there's a lot of people that just don't believe in these patents, which to me is a shame for him, because personally, what I've read through them, I actually think he's on to something. And so basically, and also this is a very interesting individual in that essentially he had a role within the Navy research when he did this work. Then he moved into Air Force, and then he moved out of Air Force into Space Force. So now he's with Space Force. And so essentially Kurt landed a freaking interview with him. And so I don't have anything to report other than that, but I'm really, really, really excited, aside from the fact that it's him, but the fact that Kurt is the one interviewing him means that it's going to be a very technical interview. And what Kurt said is that it's his intention. And he said, I don't know if I'll have time to do this. He goes, but it's his intention to go through those patents with a fine-tooth comb with Salvador on the, there with him. And if he can pull that off, that would be outstanding.
Well, good luck to him for that, because that is not only a very difficult subject, but as talented as Kurt J. Munkle is, he does struggle with the UFO stuff a little bit, especially experience.
Oh yes, yeah. But this will essentially be a physics talk,
right?
And so it's going to be technical, but it should be, if it happens, with bells on, it's going to be good stuff. I'm looking forward to it.
Anything juicy in there, in those patents?
Yeah, essentially, look, let's go on the assumption. Okay, let's just go on the assumption that that everything in there is either real, or it's close enough to real that it was reasonable to assume that those things would be available in the next 5 to 10 years, right? And let's assume that what he's talking about is basically room temperature semiconductors. He's talking about the ability to basically take a ship down. It's amazing the stuff that he's pulling off. To me, it's just and once again, to me, like the whole idea of essentially having a dual hull ship with this metamaterial in it, is very akin to what we've been hearing going back all the way to you even go back to the TR3B stuff with that gentleman that did that interview, that where all that stuff came from. This is all very inline stuff. But what we're talking about is an incredibly high-powered, low-footprint fusion design. So basically, something that produces energy, something that reduces your initial inertia, which basically is what keeps you from getting squished, and then the ability to have a transmedium hull. And he basically nails like the 5 observables in 3 patents.
That sounds interesting. Very interesting. John, thank you for a very educational UAP report tonight. Really do
Always
appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you, everyone, for sticking around. Yep.
Always love to have you here. Let's see what Shirky Poo has for us tonight.
Yep.
All right, Shirky Poo, what do you got for us tonight? How about this? You tell me if this is accidental. A South Korean man has been found guilty of stabbing his grandmother about 60 times, but was handed a lenient sentence as the court ruled the killing to be accidental. The 19-year-old man killed his grandmother out of rage because she was nitpicky and scolded him and his younger brother, according to the reports. The brothers had lived with their grandparents since 2012 after their parents got divorced and cut communication. The older brother, found guilty of murder, was given 7 to 12 years in prison. The prosecution had asked for life, the maximum sentence for murder. The younger brother, 17, was handed a 2.5-year sentence after he was found guilty of assisting his older brother in the murder by closing the windows so their 77-year-old grandmother's screams couldn't be heard from outside. This case has sparked outrage among Koreans, as it should, who have disagreed with the court's decision that repeatedly stabbing was accidental, criticizing Korea's judicial system as too lax on teenagers. Some critics also took issue with the judge gifting the brothers the book Bicycle Thief, a Korean short story collection in which one story details a boy who tries to keep his good conscience among materialistic adults, What a joke, one Twitter said on YouTube, on Twitter, thank you, and also went and called the judge crazy for this response. Man, holy cow. Moving on, this is a crappy situation here. Firefighters in County Durham had to come to the rescue of a toddler who decided while playing he was going to stick his head in his potty training seat and got stuck. Yep, the crew from Darlington removed the rim and freed little Edward after his head got lodged in the potty. No word if this kid is related to our listener Fap, who has a very large head. It was not your bog standard rescue, said the County Durham and Darlington Fire Rescue Service. Somehow he managed to get his training seat stuck around his head, but our crews got to work quickly and managed to release him in no time by cutting away the plastic. Yep, a real crappy situation there. Can you imagine if that was full? Ugh. Transportation officials in Minnesota say a stretch of highway has been closed after a truck lost its load of potatoes and the spuds froze in place on the road. You'd expect this to happen in Idaho. Yep, the Minnesota Department of Transportation said a truck crashed Thursday morning in the eastbound lanes of Interstate 94 in Albertville near Wright Road 19. MNDOT, so that'd be Minnesota Department of Transportation, said specialized equipment was needed to be brought to the scene because the spilled potatoes were freezing due to the cold temperatures. The highway was closed to all traffic except emergency officials during the cleanup, which was completed in the morning. No injuries were reported, and no word if the spuds are going back into the truck to be sold. I doubt it, but you never know. You never know. All right, let's continue on. Wildlife experts are puzzled in Pennsylvania, and they are having a genetic testing done to identify a mystery animal that might be a dog or it might be a coyote. Christina Eith of Fairfield Township said she noticed paw prints in front of her door earlier this week, followed them around her house to their source. A small dog-like animal was curled up outside her basement door. I peeked outside the door, and that's whenever I noticed the animal on the left-hand side, and it was so scared, cold, and shivering. I said she wasn't sure if the animal was a dog or coyote, but she wanted to help the creature, so she coaxed it into her basement and contacted a rescue society. TJ's contacted Wildlife Works Mount Pleasant, which sent rescuer Morgan Barron to the scene, and they investigated the case, and they are now still dumbfounded what this kind of dog or coyote is, until they get some genetic testing done to determine the species. Behavior-wise, it was very timid, very scared, not aggressive at all, which leans toward a dog, says Barron. This poor dog, you could tell, absolutely abused, had no fur, probably lots of mange. Let's just hope that this puppy can survive. Big thank you to Shirky Poo for the news, Fedora John for the unbiased UFO report. We had a great time listening to a couple of stories for our main man, Swamp Dweller, so make sure you go and hit subscribe on his YouTube channel as he continues to grow. And then for Nomar Slevik coming on in, talking about his books and dealing with experiencers who've had just amazing encounters and how they deal with it. That is the way to go, as we need to set the tone for respecting those with experiences a little bit more. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us. Because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night.